Good morning. This is Geeta, Assistant Professor, Department of English. I am going to share one of the short stories of Tagore, Kabuliwala. Topics to be covered: author introduction, main character of the story, summary of the story, character sketches, and conclusion. Rabindranath Tagore was born on 7th May 1861. He was generally known as Gurudev of Bengal, the notable poet of Bengal. He wrote many poems, novels, short stories, songs, dance, drama. As he started his work as a poet as an early age in 8 years old boy itself. His notable work is Geetanjali, for which he won the Nobel Prize, and he wrote the national anthem for two countries, Janagana Mana for our country and Bangladesh Amar Shonar Bangla. His notable works is Tagore's major plays was Raja, Takar, and he wrote many short stories. He won the Nobel Prize for Geetanjali, and which was composed of 103 poems. It was a spiritual poem in which Tagore himself dedicated at the feet of God. He won the Nobel Prize in 1913. The main characters of Kabuliwala is the narrator, the Mini's father, and the short stories unnamed first person narrator and photo and protagonist. And he spends most of his time in writing short stories in his home. The narrator describes himself as a Bengali Babu, a respectable title that implies that he is financially comfortable, educated, and respected as in his hometown of Calcutta, India. The narrator loves his only child Minnie, who is 5 year old at the beginning of the short story. The quotes from Kabliwala. My 5 year old little daughter Minnie cannot stop talking for a minute. His mother often scolds her and makes her shut up, but I cannot do that. When Minnie is quiet, it is so unnatural that I cannot bear it. So she is rather keen on chatting to me. Rakamat is a traveling fruit seller from Afghanistan or Kabliwala and is often referred to as Metch. He is first seen wearing dirty, baggy clothes, which indicates that he is from lower class as he is not from Calcutta and speaks broken Bengali. Rakamat is a something of an that ostracized figure in town, and the narrator treats him with suspicions until the man makes friendship with the narrator's 5 year old daughter Minnie. Rakamat bribes with Minnie with Pishchas to talk to him at first, but eventually they develop a real friendship. He visits the narrator's house every day and bring more nuts, fruits, and raisins and listens to her that is inexhaustible chatter for us as she resembles her own daughter. Minnie. Minnie is the only child of the narrator and his wife. At the beginning of the story, she is a talkative, irresistible, and energetic 5 year old little girl. She is very close with her father, preferring him instead of her short tempered mother, who frequently scolds her for talking too much and asking too much questions. As a child, Minnie spends a lot of time in her father's study, hanging out with him while he works on his work. One day she saw Rakamat, a local fruit vendor, coming down the road with and starts yelling Kabriwala at him until she gets his attention, and she comes over with his boxes of grapes and nuts. Minnie is shy and afraid of him at first, but unbeknownst to the narrator, Rakamat and the gradually they strike up with the friendship. Narrator discovers this one day when he walks out of the house. They two were sitting to each other and they were eagerly talking and chatting with each other. Like the narrator, Minnie's mother is never named in the story, unlike the unlike the and mm, patient father, the narrator. Minnie's mother has a short temper and is quick to scold Minnie for her accessible chatter and endless questions. Although they are both homebodies, the narrator often dreams of adventures and leaving Calcutta, while Minnie's mother is terrified of the danger that exists outside of the neighborhood and even asks the narrator to keep an eye as Rahmat to make sure he is not going to kidnap that is Minnie and sell her into the Afghanistan. Moreover, like the narrator, Minnie's mother is progressive and not and spend and ask Minnie to spend her childhood enjoyment rather than spending her for the preparation of the marriage. Parvati, the narrator, refers the Rahmat's daughter back in Afghanistan as the title mountain dwelling Parvati, suggesting that that's her name. Rahmat only mentions his daughter at the end of the story, which he reveals to Minnie. Introduction. Recommends Tagore short story Kabuliwala sets in the early 20th century Calcutta in about a little girl Minnie and Kabuliwala exploring the bonds of friendship, affection and parting, transcending the borders of race, religion and language. The prime characters are two Kabuliwala and Minnie. Kabuliwala's name was Rakamat, a middle-aged Pathan trader, a food seller from the Afghanistan. She goes to Calcutta having her family a family and in particularly he leaves her that is little girl daughter from Afghanistan and Minnie resembles her. Kabuliwala is a Bengali short story written by Rabindranath Tagore in 1892 during Tagore's Sadhana period named for one of the Tagore's magazines from 1891 to 1895. The star story is about the fruit seller, a Pathan from Kabul, Afghanistan, who visited to Calcutta, present day Calcutta, in India each year for selling dry fruits, and while living in India, he develops a final affection with the 5-year-old little girl Minnie, a middle class aristocrat family. Kabuliwala opens with the narrator describing his 5-year-old daughter Minnie. She cannot stop talking for a minute and is frequently scolded by her mother for it. The narrator, on the other hand, thinks that it is unnatural when Minnie is quiet and shows he spends a lot of time talking to her and answering her many questions. One morning, Minnie chats with her father while he is working on her adventures novel. She looks outside the window and spots at Kabuliwala and named Rakamat and starts calling him. That is, however, when he comes over, Minnie runs into another room and convinced by the large bags, that is convinced that she with the and she was afraid of that is Kabuliwala because she was told by her mother she might be caught and she was she, Kabuliwala is remained to catch the children and sell in the Afghanistan. Few years later, the narrator finds Minnie sitting next to Rakamat and talking to him with a pile of raisins and nuts in her lap. The narrator tells Rakamat not to give her any more treats and gives him a half rupee, which Rakamat takes. Later, Minnie's mother scolds Minnie for having a half rupee, which Minnie says Rakamat gave her. The narrator saves Minnie from her mother's wrath and brings her outside, where she tells him that Rakamat has come by almost every day to listen to her talk. Among the numerous jokes they have together, one starts with Rakamat Minnie, don't ever go to your Shavashberry. That means the Kabuliwala asks Minnie when she will be going to her mother in law's home. That means when she is going to get married. Minnie doesn't understand what this means because the narrator and the progressive people who don't keep talking of their that is young girl with the marriage. This both the parents of Minnie, they never talk about the marriage to the little girl and they leave her to enjoy the childhood days. It is autumn which the narrator associates with the things setting out on their world conquest, which further reminds him that he has never set out Calcutta, even though he longs to explore the world. He has an active imagination and frequently imagines distant lands, but he is rooted sort of individual, and whenever he does leave his familiar spot, he will practically collapse. Because of this, the narrator is happy to spend a morning and listening to Rahman's stories of Afghanistan and traveling. Minnie's mother is very different. She is scared of the outside world, and he imagines it is full of extreme dangers. She is scared out of the outside world and imagines it is full of extreme dangers and happy with Rahmat, a complete stranger, spending so much time with Minnie, and she wants the narrator to keep an eye on him. When the narrator tells her there is nothing to worry about, she talks about the possibility of Minnie being kidnapped and sold into slavery. Rahmat, however, continues to come and the narrator continues to enjoy seeing with Minnie. Ragamat is preparing to go home. Part of these preparations to go all around Calcutta and collect money and customers owe him. But he always makes time in the evening to stop at the narrator's house to talk with Minnie. One morning, the narrator hears something going on in the streets and looks out the window to see Rahmat covered in blood being led down the street in handcuffs. The narrator runs outside and Rahmat tells him that he got into physical, that is, altercations with a customer who had refused to pay, and during the fight he stabbed the customer. Minnie comes out and asks Rahmat if he is being taken to his Shavasbury and says that Rahmat is sent to jail. The innocent girl doesn't know what happens to his friend Rahmat, the fruit seller Kabuliwala. Really, he was taken to jail because of his crime. A few years later, the narrator and his wife are preparing for Minnie's wedding day. Minnie almost she forgets the friendship with the fruit seller Kabuliwala day by day as she was growing, and she is grown up to a girl, and now she is getting to get married. The house is full of people setting things, and the narrator has isolated himself in his study. Rahmat suddenly arrives and tells the narrator he had been released from jail the day before, which reminds the narrator of his crime and sets him on the edge. The narrator tells Rahmat that they are busy and he will have to go, but Rahmat asks if he can see Minnie. Once again, the narrator tries to brush him off, and Rahmat prepares to see Minnie, but as he walks out the door, and he asks the narrator to give Minnie some of the grapes and raisins which he brought her as a token of love and the token of friendship with each other, as she thinks the same Minnie of a little girl of 5 years old. He cannot imagine that Minnie has grown up and now she is going to get married. The narrator gets some money to pay Rahmat for them, but Kabuliwala, Rahmat, he refused to get the money from the narrator, and he tells, and it is only a token of love and the bond of friendship between Minnie and Minnie and her, and it is not to do business. Rahmat pulls a crumpled piece of paper out of the breast pocket of the shirt and shows the narrator the handprint of his daughter Parvati that he carries with him while he travels for work. Seeing it, the narrator forgot then that he was in Afghanistan, a raisin seller, and I was a Bengali bob. Instead, recognizing that he was a father, just I am a father. That is, here we can see only the emotions of the two fathers beyond the nation. Thus, this changes the narrator's mind about sending Rahmat away from the home, and he calls Minnie down with her bridal dress. And when she comes, it seems she is dressed as a bride and acts shy and uncomfortable. Rahmat, that is the Kabuliwala, she cannot imagine the little girl Minnie has grown up to look in a bridal dress, and Rahmat tries to joke with her as usual to remain their friendship. But now, as Minnie is grown up and she is not able to have the same friendship with the Rahmat, and she feels very shy as a bride. And now the Rahmat asks, that is, now Rakamat, the Kabliwala, asked Minnie when she is going to go to her mother in law's house. Minnie feels very shy and she never answers and she moves away. When Minnie leaves, Rakamat suddenly realizes that his daughter, like Minnie, must have grown up and she also to be get married. As Rahmat thinks about Afghanistan and his daughter, the narrator pulls out some money and asks Rahmat to use it to go to home. He tells Rahmat that, but your but your blessed reunion, Minnie will be blessed. And giving Rahmat the money means that Minnie's wedding party is not as grand as it might have been, but the narrator is happy with it, believing that these ceremonies was lit by a kinder, more gracious light, and he believes the little money would help for Rahmat's, that is Kabuliwala's daughter, to get married. Key lessons. The fundamental message of the story is that people have the ability to do good as well as bad to others. It is easier to side with our fears and suspect someone who is not like us. It can be difficult to judge others in their way, and it can be different skin color or a different language. We must not suspect the people. But if we are patient with the people and try to understand their situations and problems, then we can find some common ground. They go through the same emotions and conflicts as we do. They are also faced with difficult choices like us. Therefore, we must be sympathy as well as empathy for their struggles if we expect to receive the same from them. And we all live to make each other life easier and worth living. And the moral of the story is that we have to respect each other emotions. And now the Kabliwala, the story written by Tagore, reveals the only emotions of the two fathers as to for their daughters. It is beyond the race, color, religion, and etc. And then the Bengali Babu stands as a father for many, as well as the Afghanistan food seller Kabuliwala Ragamad stands as a father of his daughter in Afghanistan. Thank you. This is Geeta, Department of English, Assistant Professor. I am going to share one of the short stories of Rabindranath Tagore. Topics to be covered: author introduction, main characters of the story, summary of the story, character sketches, and conclusion. Rabindranath Tagore was a notable poet. Generally, he was called as Gurudev. He wrote many poems, dramas, short stories, songs, and lyrics. His notable work is Gitanjali, for which he conquired the Nobel Prize in 1913. He wrote the Janagana Mana of India as well as the national anthem of Bangladesh, Amar Shonar Bengali. His works. His notable works are Tagore, which was composed of 103 poems, and it is a spiritual poem for which he dedicated to God, and he himself translated in English. The other important works of Tagore are the Manasi, Raja, Tagore, Takar, and etc. The main characters in the Kabuliwala are Minnie's father and the story's unnamed first person narrator and protagonist, and the events of the story largely takes place in the narrator's study and just outside of his house. The narrator describes himself as a Bengali Babu, a respectable title that implies that he is financially comfortable, educated, and respected in his hometown of Calcutta, India. The narrator loves is one each book. This is Geeta, Department of English, Assistant Professor. I am going to share one of the short stories of Rabindranath Tagore. Topics to be covered: author introduction, main characters of the story, summary of the story, character sketches, and conclusion. Rabindranath Tagore was a notable poet. Generally, he was called as Gurudev. He wrote many poems, dramas, short stories, songs, and lyrics. His notable work is Gitanjali, for which he conquired the Nobel Prize in 1913. He wrote the Janagana Mana of India as well as the national anthem of Bangladesh, Amar Shonar Bengali. His works. His notable works are Tagore, which was composed of 103 poems, and it is a spiritual poem for which he dedicated to God, and he himself translated in English. The other important works of Tagore are the Manasi, Raja, Tagore, Takar, and etc. The main characters in the Kabuliwala are Minnie's father and the story's unnamed first person narrator and protagonist, and the events of the story largely takes place in the narrator's study and just outside of his house. The narrator describes himself as a Bengali Babu, a respectable title that implies that he is financially comfortable, educated, and respected in his hometown of Calcutta, India. The narrator loves his only child, Minnie, who is 5 years old at the beginning of the story. Quotes by narrator: 5-year-old daughter Minnie cannot stop talking for a minute. Her mother often scolds her and makes her shut up. But I cannot do that when Minnie is quiet. It is so unnatural that I cannot bear it. So she is rather keen on chatting to me. He is first seen wearing dirty, baggy clothes, which includes that he is from a lower class Kabliwala, as he is known from Calcutta and speaks broken Bengali. Ragamath is something of an aristocratized figure in a town, and the narrator treats him with suspicion until the man makes a friendship with the narrator's 5-year-old daughter Minnie. Ragamath bribes Minnie with pictures to talk to him at first, but eventually they develop a real friendship. He visits the narrator's house every day and, and, and give more fruits, nuts, and raisins and listen to her excitable chatter. Occasionally, he also talks with the narrator about Afghanistan and his surroundings. Minnie. Minnie is the only child of the narrator and his wife, and the beginning of the story, that is, she is very talkative, inquisitive, and energetic 5-year-old girl. She is very close with her father, preferring him instead of her short tempered mother, who is frequently scolds her for talking too much and asking too many questions. As a child, Minnie spends a lot of time in her father's study, hanging out with him, While he works on his novel, one day he saw Ragamat, a local fruit vendor, coming down the road and starts yelling Kabliwala at him until she gets his attention and she comes over with his boxes of grapes and nuts. Minnie is shy and afraid of him at first, but but unbeknownst to the narrator, Rakamat and gradually strike to be a friendship. Narrator discovers thus one day when he walks out of his house, he saw Rakamat and Minnie, and they were talking eagerly and listening to her talk. Like the narrator, Minnie's mother is never named in the story until the patient, unlike unlike her father, and she is unveiled. She is very rude towards Minnie since she is having a talkative nature towards a stranger. Minnie's mother has a short temper and is quick to scold Minnie for her inexhaustible chatter and endless questions. Although they are both homebodies, the narrator often dreams of adventures and leaving Calcutta, while Minnie's mother is terrified of the danger that exists outside of their neighborhood and even asks the narrator to keep an eye on Ragamat on to make sure he isn't going to kidnap Minnie and sell her into an Afghanistan. However, like the narrator, Minnie's mother is progressive and Minnie, that is, and let her enjoy a carefree childhood rather than spending on the dreams of the marriage life. Parvati, the narrator refers to Rakamat's daughter back in Afghanistan as the little mountain dwelling Parvati, suggesting that is her name. Rakamat only mentions his daughter at the end of the story when he reveals to Minnie. Introduction. Rabindranath Tagore's short story Kabuliwala, set in the early 20th century Kolkata, is about a little girl Minnie and Kabuliwala exploring the bonds of friendship, affection, and parting, transcending the borders of race, religion, and language. The prime characters are two, Kabuliwala and Minnie. Kabuliwala's name was Rakamat, a middle-aged Pathan trader, a dry food seller from Afghanistan, who comes to Calcutta, leaving his family, and in particularly about his daughter and Minnie, who resembles her daughter, show only she has a close bondage with the little girl Minnie. Kabuliwala opens with the narrator describing his 5-year-old daughter Minnie. She cannot stop talking for a minute and is frequently scolded by her mother for it. The narrator, on the other hand, thinks that it is unnatural when Minnie is quiet and sure he spends a lot of time talking to her and answering her questions. One morning, Minnie chats with her father while he is working on a for her as a reminder of the past friendship. The narrator gets some money to pay Ragamat for them, but it was beyond the nation, race, color, and racism. The father of Minnie, as well as the father of the little girl, the fruit seller who is from Afghanistan, they too they worked for their future of their children, and the emotions, the bondage, is covered within the short story Kabuliwala. Thank you. And the nation, race, color, and racism. The father of Minnie, as well as the father of the little girl, the fruit seller who is from Afghanistan, they too they worked for their future of their children, and the emotions, the bondage, is covered within the short story Kabuliwala. Thank you. And shows the narrator that handprint of his daughter Parvati, that he carries skin, color, or a different language. But if we are patient with people and try to understand their situations and problems, then we can find some common ground. They go through the same emotions and conflicts as we do. They are also faced with difficult choices like us. Therefore, we must be empathy for their struggles if we expect to receive the same same from them. And as we all live to make each other's life easier and worth living. Thank you. The short story of Kabuliwala by Tagore brings out the emotions of the true father beyond the nation, race, color, and racism. The father of meaning